Wait. Yeah, that's it.
Ah, we're
Oh,
live. Welcome back.
good
Thanks
morning,
for
gents
joining us.
and everyone. Yes,
That's Chef Olive to my right, and to his left is me. I'm James Melgren, and together we are the brains of the operation.
I switched you.
Uh-oh. Ah!
Now you have to look like this, man. James, you have to look like this. Good morning, people. Oh, 4 days back. Look.
Frode's in
Yeah,
already.
4 days, long
Wow.
time, man. Welcome.
We promise we're going to get Frode back on as a guest.
Yes,
That'll be really
that
fun.
was fun.
So, when we first started doing a podcast, before it was even video, we were just doing
Oh yeah,
an
that's right.
audio podcast. Our
Right.
premise was that we were answering questions
Yep.
that had been posed by actual students at Kitchen on Fire in their exit survey, and there was a ton of questions. We have
Uh,
long lists of questions. Some of them are really good questions. Some of them are kind of
some
stupid
of them are,
questions.
some of them are just questions.
Yeah. There's no stupid question when it comes to cooking and food, because if you don't know, you don't know, and you need to ask. So, um,
There's lots of stupid questions. What are you talking about?
well, the stupidest question was somebody asked Coke or Pepsi, and our answer to that was, why would you drink either one? I mean,
Oh my
it's
God, yeah.
artificially flavored, artificially colored
And
sugar
also,
water.
don't eat poison. That's just
Yeah,
enough, right?
yeah, yeah.
Stay away from poison, people. All right.
Uh,
Anyway, so we went back to our question that actually student asks. It's real student ask the real questions. Of
yeah,
course, some of the questions are really crazy, and that's why we like them. But
yeah.
anyway, so
And some of them are great because they prompt discussion, and there's lots of, there's no simple answers to some of these. Some of these are very straightforward. Like
right,
somebody asked, what's the difference between baking powder and baking soda? Well, that one's easy because it's very concrete. Baking soda is basically bicarbonate of soda that acts as a rising agent in, biscuits and cookies and all kinds of stuff, pancakes, whatever. But baking soda, bicarbonate of soda needs a agent to activate it, some sort of acid agent to activate it and make it work. So if you add, like, if you're making
right.
pancakes, you might add
So
buttermilk, or you might add
I
lemon
can
or
show,
something.
I could show them.
Yeah. Baking
Uh,
powder, on the other hand, already has a agent incorporated into it, that so it makes it a complete thing. So you can just use it on its own. So you you don't necessarily want to substitute one for the other, because if something calls for baking soda, it's probably also calling for that other acidic agent that
right.
activates it. So you
Which
want to
is
be careful
like
about
lemon.
substituting. Yeah,
It would be lemon or it would be buttermilk or something acidic. So
yeah,
it brings the
yeah,
acid into that. So
yeah.
for example, Alka-Seltzer, right?
Right.
So Alka-Seltzer, you can make your own, literally. And I was going to show you, but I can show you next time. It's just baking soda,
Mm-hmm.
water, little bit, and then when you're ready, you squeeze half a lemon, and it's gonna
And then it's
go.
gonna go,
You drink it, and it feels really good.
and it feels
That's
good on your tummy.
Alka-Seltzer. That's Alka-Seltzer.
But you need
Next,
that acidic
yeah.
element. So in other
For
words, if
for
you
the
were to if
reaction.
you were to combine baking soda with my fourth grade science teacher, it would work. She was very
Ah, yeah,
acidic. She was very.
yeah. hmm I see. That was a joke, right?
That was a joke. I'm sorry. I'll put up a little sign next time.
Oh my God, James, he's almost lost his voice, but
Yes,
we
I'm
gave him,
sorry
we
about
gave
that.
him, we gave him some reboot and some garlic thing, and now he feels better. But
I
we're
feel
not.
much better, and the something's moving in there, but I'm definitely better. Um, Better than what, I don't know.
So I'm going to show you a few things today. I have a bunch of bacon left over, and I want to show you how to make bacon the best way,
Yeah,
the way I do, the way my mom taught me.
the French way.
Well, it's mostly, yeah, most French way. So I'm just gonna do it while you talk, chef.
I loved that when we had Gregoire on the show. Gregoire is a friend of ours, a chef, a really, really
Oh yeah.
talented chef who has a very popular takeaway food business here in Berkeley. And you were talking about bacon that day. I think you were demonstrating it. And you said something about, when I cook bacon, I always, poach it first. And Gregoire just instantly goes, oh yeah, of course, that's the way you do it. So, I mean, I think it
Oh,
is a very
cool.
common French thing.
Well, that's great. So what I do is basically I just gonna. It's pretty easy, guys. It's actually easier than put some water like this, right? I don't know how much that is, but it's I don't know, a couple of tablespoons. And all you need to do is put your bacon like that,
Yeah,
and go on medium low, right? And you're just gonna cook it like this. And then when the water's gone, you're gonna leave it on low temp, and then it's gonna nicely cook that bacon, but it's gonna not, it's gonna, it's gonna be much healthier for you.
yeah.
Okay.
It seems
Um,
weird at first, but you got to understand that water's all going to cook away, and it's basically poaching the bacon,
yes.
and
And
then that
basically
water's all going to be gone, and then you're going to be left with just the bacon, and it's going to finish cooking. And
and
it's
it's
it.
fat.
I just think it's the only way I cook bacon now.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Oh great. And that what it does, it doesn't burn the bacon or disturb or make it not healthy.
right.
That's the idea. So I
Right.
don't burn it. So I'll show you what it looks like in a little bit. But I'm just gonna let it go, and that's all. It's pretty cool,
That's
huh?
the other nice thing about it is you can start it and you can do
That's it.
something else because it just has to cook for a while as that water burns off.
Oh, look, Kenny
Don't
is back.
feed dropped out. What does that mean?
I don't know.
Does that mean we're not live anymore?
He's,
Does
I
that
don't
mean
know.
we're
Yeah.
just talking to ourselves?
Anyway, so
That's
this is
okay. We like talking
my
to each other.
yeah. We don't listen to each other, so we're used to that. All right. So anyway, the
Here's
cooking is
another
going on its
here's another
own,
question.
right?
What is the world's most expensive food?
I don't know. Saffron.
Saffron's probably right up there. A lot of
How about
people assume it's caviar, and
hmm
then the question finishes with has it always been? And although caviar is expensive, caviar wasn't always expensive. They used to give caviar away in
Oh
bars
shit.
in New York.
So we
You
did
guys
disappear.
disappeared just before the bacon happened. You're back, I'm pretty
Oh
sure.
man. So did you see what I did? I just added some water
We just didn't want you to see that step, Kenny, because it's top secret.
because that's the secret, right? So just a
Yeah.
little water. Go on medium, super gentle, and the water is gonna go, and the bacon is gonna fry all by itself, just
Yep.
like by magic. And then
Yep.
when all the water is gone,
It'll just be a pan full of deliciousness. Is it
perseverate.
percebes? No, it's bacon. You've been here all the time. See,
See,
it's you,
look,
Kenny.
it's you, Kenny. Your this is
You
wrong.
blinked
Even
for a
Frode, who is calling us from the weirdest place in Norway.
actually in the North Sea off the coast of Norway.
Yeah.
He's
Anyway,
somewhere between Norway and Scotland. Actually,
um,
Shetland. So yeah,
anyway,
so in New York in the turn of the last century, they used to give caviar for free. They'd have it sitting on the bars, and it was just to encourage you to drink, sort of like they do with peanuts and popcorn today. So uh, and it's home country, Russia and throughout
right.
Central Asia, caviar was never very expensive. I mean, everyone ate it.
You know, caviar is super good for you, right? It's
Yeah,
one of the superfood. It's full of DHA, really good omega-3. It's amazing. There's a bunch of nutrients. I was reading about this, how crazy good for you it is.
yeah.
Anyway,
I love caviar,
so
and
right, our truffles.
they're like 3 times more expensive by weight than truffles. Are you talking about saffron? Saffron is crazy expensive,
Saffron is
although you use
expensive,
so little of it that it's not that expensive to use.
and capers also. I realize capers are super expensive.
Yeah.
The dried capers or the green peppercorn.
Uh-huh.
The dried peppercorn also super expensive.
Yeah.
So when I buy the real deal, that's like. Anyway,
Yeah. And he's right. Truffles have always been expensive because they're hard to get. You can't just grow them in your garden. You have to go out and hunt them, and
yeah,
you have to have a
they
special animal that can find it, either a dog or
an
a
oak.
pig. So, um, used to have a guy from
Capers
Pan.
are pretty phenomenal also as far as health wise.
Have you guys
So
had
all this,
capers from Pantelleria?
yeah,
Pan
yeah.
Pantelleria. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Send us some. We'll eat them on air. Um, used to have a guy that would bring us truffles at Dean and DeLuca. He would go. The truffles would be harvested or found. They would rush them to the airport in Rome or in Milan, and then they would fly to New York, and this guy would meet them at the airport and then bring them directly to us. So they were like, less than 24
Wow.
hours out of the ground. And he would walk by. I'd be at my desk, and he would walk through the store heading for the charcuterie, and I could smell it. They would just hit me like a wave.
Wow.
These were white truffles, so they were very, very fragrant.
The white
Uh,
truffles and the black truffles are a little bit different, but they have a lot of similarities.
they have a
Just to
lot of
tell you about this.
similarities. You use them a little differently.
Right,
The white
right,
ones you can shave onto a dish and use them kind
right.
of raw, and they'll get very
Yeah,
fragrant on the dish. Black ones you really need to cook more.
yeah, right. So that's the difference. You can cook the black one, but the white goes on the top as they have different flavors profile. The black is more subtle, so you have to cook them to get the flavors.
Right, right. Both are very good. Both are very expensive, but worth
Yeah.
it. I've been in Italy before when they've done truffle festivals where there are restaurants where literally every single course had truffles in it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Oh my God.
Oh, the island by Sicily. Yeah. I have
Yeah.
had those. I have had those. I've had
Wow.
them at I can't remember where, but I remember now. Um, good stuff. A lot of good stuff comes from around Sicily. All that volcanic soil. We have a
So now
wine
the
right
water,
now.
see, the water is almost gone,
Yeah.
and I'm just gonna go on really low and let them crisp all by
That's the
themselves.
mistake most people make. They get their pan super hot on a
No,
pretty
no,
high
no, no,
flame, and then they throw
no.
the bacon in, and it just kind of burns the fat.
Easy.
It's not a healthy way to cook.
No.
Gives bacon a bad name. And I have to admit that's the way I used to cook bacon, and now
That's
I
not your
don't.
grandma. Your grandma?
My grammar. And quit talking about my grammar.
Oh, I thought you were talking about his grandmother.
Uh,
Beautiful. Ooh, that smells good.
so
So,
this is a good question, I think, because it confuses a lot of Americans. What kind of wine is Claret, and how does it differ
oh yeah.
from Bordeaux?
Hmm.
Well, the short answer is there's no difference. Claret is what the British often call Bordeaux wine. And the reason they do is because the original wines from Bordeaux that first went to England were actually very, very light, almost rosé wines, and they were often spiced to
To
similar to
preserve.
what we do with sherry and Madeira. The spices help preserve the wine so that it could travel to England. So they were light, rosé, spiced wines.
Right.
And Claret, Clairet, refers to a light colored wine,
Yeah. Clear.
clear wine.
Like
Yeah.
claret. Yeah.
So
So
that's why
clear.
they
Not
called
not
it.
not as
And
yeah.
yeah. And
Not
then, of
as deep as
course,
the color.
right. And then, of course, the English, that word morphed into claret.
Mm.
And so that's a lot of what a lot of British, especially of a certain generation, they still refer to Bordeaux wine as claret. Um, so it's the same thing. Claret is Bordeaux.
Wow. Look at this.
It's
So
the
now
Bordeaux
I'm gonna.
that's changed.
Sorry. Now I'm just gonna flip it and let it go. This is very low temp, people. Really low
Hmm.
temp. I'm gonna have the best bacon. Also, I'm going to be able to keep the fat because I didn't burn the fat. I didn't damage the bacon. I didn't damage any of the fat. So that's very healthy for you. See, that bacon is healthy. Bacon is really healthy if you cook it properly. Okay?
Yeah. And I always save the fat. I have a jar of
Oh my,
bacon
of
fat in the
course.
fridge all the time,
This
and
is like beautiful stuff. Look at this.
I use it to
Wow.
cook eggs. I use it to cook
Yeah.
you can use bacon fat for virtually anything that you would use butter or oil for.
Well, it's much better for you.
It's just a matter of taste. And
See that? Look at that. Whoa. Pretty cool, huh?
but what I've discovered is you have to be patient cooking bacon. You can't It's not something you should try to cook super fast. Let it take its time, let it gently cook. The end product is much better, and it's much better for you. And that's
Right.
all I have to say about bacon, except that I like it very much.
Yeah, no, I love bacon too, man. Good
Here's an
food. Smells
excellent
good.
question.
Go
Here's an
for it.
excellent question that I think deserves some attention. How many chefs does it take to screw in a light bulb? I think the answer is none, because a chef wouldn't do it. A chef would assign it to the sous chef, who would then in turn assign it to someone else.
Someone,
And
some other Sue, something.
yeah, so somewhere down the line would be like the new guy who would be charged with changing the light bulb. So, how many chefs does it take to screw in a light bulb? Zero.
Yeah, because I think that what's happening is the light bulb is not going to get changed. That's what's happening, Buffy. Seriously, you go in places sometimes the dish pit guy, no, no, no,
The
nobody's
dish
going
pit
to do it.
guy, yeah, it'd probably be the
It's
dishwasher.
it's usually the owner when after like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, someone is like, we really can't see, and someone has to come and change that bulb. That nobody cares.
After somebody loses a finger, then they change the bulb.
Just to find the finger, then they remove it.
Well, we talk about the
Wow.
dishwasher as being the lowest position, but we all know that the dishwasher is the most important job in the restaurant, because how fast would your restaurant go into complete chaos if there was no
Wow.
dishwasher?
Oh my God. Can't even imagine.
Yeah, it would be a nightmare that you'd have while awake. Um,
Yeah.
what does it mean when a cheese is described as cave aged? Well,
Oh yeah.
assuming they're not lying, cave aged
We
means
should. Why not?
exactly that. It means that the cheese are aged in actual caves. This is true of a lot of there's certain Swiss Gruyere is often aged in caves. They have caves in Switzerland that are dug out, that are ancient, and they're full of all these wonderful bacteria, wild yeasts, and things that work on the cheese.
Had,
And the other thing about caves is they're the perfect temperature and humidity level for cheese, especially when you're aging a hard cheese like a Gruyere,
yeah.
because otherwise you pay a lot of money to control the environment in an aging room. You need to control the temperature, the humidity, and it's constantly in flux. A cave is very, very steady. It's the same
Right.
temperature
Right.
365 days a year. The humidity is sort of
Right.
perfect. I'm not necessarily all caves, but the caves that they use are perfect for this. They'd also be perfect for storing wine too. And so this is an ancient way of aging cheeses, and some cheesemakers, especially in Switzerland and France, Spain, probably Italy too. There are certain cheesemakers that still use these natural caves as aging
Well,
rooms, and they're perfect.
one for one for sure is, for example,
Roquefort,
Roquefort is beautiful.
yeah,
Good idea.
yeah.
I wish you had to collect the.
The fat,
We have been well.
we have all been
Yeah,
cave aged these last few years.
I know
That's true,
exactly,
Kevin.
Kevin.
That's
Kevin
very
is one of our
true.
one of our chefs at Kitchen on Fire. He knows a lot about food. That's
I
for
think
sure.
that's true, and I think that I taste much better after being cave aged.
I'm cave age, so I'm gonna save my bacon on this guy. You see,
Uh-huh.
so the fat is gonna collect in the bottom, and they're gonna be really pretty. Look at this.
Mm.
Wow. And now, cool. I have beautiful bacon I can use for whenever. You can
You
use it
could
like this.
also you could also just put them on a paper towel that would collect the grease, but then you would lose
No,
the fat.
yeah. Then you lose your. No, that's not good. That's what people do, but that's too bad because then I
But you're
can't
not
collect my fat.
people.
I'm not people.
That's right. Oh, that's perfect.
See that? Beautiful.
That's beautiful looking bacon.
And now I can strain that and look at the fat, how pretty that is.
And if you subscribe to our new device, the
See
Smellorama
that?
feature
Yeah.
of our podcast, you'd be able to smell that bacon right now.
But if you see
Yeah, look
clear,
at how
clear
clear
fat,
that is.
so that means I can use it again. Otherwise,
Hmm.
I can't. So if I would burn if I would cook the bacon too hot, I will see the fat going really too brown. That means I can't eat it.
Hmm.
Right now, I'm going to strain it with a fine mesh strainer. I'm going to put it in a bowl, and I'm going to use it whenever, another time. Right.
Yep.
So I'm going to get a little strainer, chef.
You could use it. You could actually use it immediately and cook some eggs in it.
Oh yeah. So if I would do that, I would also put them on potatoes, chef.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I do is I brush the potatoes before I go in the oven. It's pretty cool.
Hmm. That's a great idea.
Oh yeah, it smells so good after that. So just strain it like this. And
Ah,
bacon
very
fat.
nice. Very nice.
And look at this. Pretty. I can use that. And that's
Yeah.
a good 2 tablespoons of really good fat. And
Yeah.
that's expensive. Okay. All right.
Yeah. You could pay good
Great.
money for that fat. And you've already paid the money because you already bought the
Right.
bacon. So why pay
And I
extra?
and I leave it out, guys. You know, I mean, you can put it in the fridge. It's gonna harden. Then you can go with a spoon, or you can leave it outside, and it's gonna harden too, anyways. And that's it. Cool.
Yeah.
Done.
Here's another good
Beautiful.
question, I think. Why are so many cooking terms in French?
Yes. Oui.
Well,
Oui.
there's a good answer for that. I wish I had it. No, I do have it. Well, the French, especially a lot of French chefs, some very famous chefs in particular in the
Mhm.
19th century,
Or even
worked
before, chef. But yeah.
even
Okay. Let's
before,
stick.
but they really
Yeah.
worked to codify the kitchen,
Yeah.
to really create a framework for running a professional kitchen. And they're the ones that came up with all the stations of the kitchen, all the different techniques, naming the techniques, and really
And
um,
actually, you know, so James, you're right on the 1900. I would say it started way before that. But just
yeah.
to give you an idea of weight, it's pretty old. The way the kitchen has been quantified, and basically books were written in the old days until the 1200 to teach stuff. So there's no novel, or there was no stories until, or there's poetry, and then there is learning books about whatever, right?
Hmm.
But the French and Italians were the two kind of that I know of countries that, like you said, started to put the kitchen into books, very very specific to teach other chefs. So
Hmm.
it's a professional way to look at it. And the main difference between France and Italy at some point is during the Renaissance, Italy incorporated more sweet stuff in their food, as
Hmm.
French never included anything sweet in their food. So the dessert came after this differently. Italians started to put sweet stuff in the food,
Right.
and that was the big separation. But they were both, Italian and French were both very prominent into the cooking, gastronomy, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Just want to make to point that out because it started in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s. So all this period of time, you could see uh, a great cooking competition between the two countries. Really, the
Right.
Italian and the French were anyway.
And also after the French Revolution, the French really developed the concept of a restaurant,
Yeah,
because all these talented cooks that came out of the royal houses suddenly didn't have any jobs because
right.
everyone had lost their heads, quite literally. And
No, yeah, right. And basically, there was, so you have to understand that in a castle, it's not just one chef.
oh
Some
no,
castle had like 200 people working in there in
well,
the
they had
kitchen. So,
huge kitchens
right. So you
with
have to understand,
huge
like,
ovens, banks of
right,
ovens that were continually fed. I mean, the
lots of
ovens
people
never went
working.
off because you they took a long time to get hot, so you made sure that they always kept going. And you had a lot of people to feed 3 times a day, maybe more, and then they'd have parties and they'd have festivals, and
Right.
so
So I don't
it
know
was a
if you,
huge group of people. Yeah.
also, yeah, exactly. No, that's true. Those are called tourtes. And that's how people were eating. They were eating meat in a pastry. Exactly.
Yeah. So
But
the French really cataloged all this stuff, and
right.
they put it down, they set it down, and said that this is how you run a professional kitchen. You have this station, this station, this station, and they named all the different techniques. And it's interesting to note that the language of the kitchen has always been, well, when I say always, I mean for the last couple hundred years, has been French, whereas the language of music has always been
Ah,
Italian.
yeah. Funny.
When you talk about arpeggios and piano and all that,
Wow.
all those musical terms in classical and opera music, it's
That's
all
so funny.
Italian.
Wow. That's crazy.
Um, so yeah, so when you talk about, if you're going to saute something, well, that's a French term. If you're going to
Right, right,
talk
right.
about, you're going to braise something, or you're going to flambe, you're going to, all these different terms came out of these organized French kitchens. And then even the stations of the kitchen, you've got the
Who started that?
garde-manger and the
Was it
saucier,
was it Carême? Who started to regiment?
Carême and Escoffier, who of
Escoffier,
course
right,
was working in London, but he did a lot to
right.
catalog and uh,
Yeah.
codify
Right, codify, right.
this science.
Now, so
The Italians love to say that they taught the French how to cook, because when Catherine de' Medici went to she married the King of France and moved to Paris, that she brought all these cooks with her, and they taught the French how to make ice cream and how to use a
yeah,
fork and how to do all these sauces. Well, that may have been true. I mean, they did bring a lot of things to
yeah, right,
France, but the French took it and really made it into a science, and made it so that you could reproduce
right.
French cuisine anywhere. I mean, there were cooks in
That was the idea.
Rangoon that were cooking French food, and they
That
could
that's
do it
how no,
because there was
right.
this.
That's how the
Very
book
interesting.
started.
Yeah, yeah,
And I know I said that before, but in a lot of in the 1600, for example, there was already a star chef,
yeah,
and there was a bunch of people already Carême, star chef, and there was this woman I can't remember the name, but she was a very famous chef. And those stars, literally like today, they were hired by all those nobles to do special dinners. And we're
yeah,
talking dinners of it could be thousands of people.
right,
Because when a lord travels, he travels with all his court and his courtship and everybody. So if the king goes anywhere, when the king travels, it's about 2 to 3 thousand people to feed every day, every 3 times a day, like you were saying.
right,
So they travel or they go to a castle to another castle, but this is how much people you have to feed. So you have to
yeah,
think about when the king travels, all this food has to be made like all the time. And the lords that are not as powerful as the king, they still have like hundreds of people in their follower, right?
right,
So food was that's why all these people were working in kitchen. And when the revolution happened, there was all these jobs opening and the need for feeding people, so they started to do restaurants because people need to feed. There was no feeding at home. There's not enough food. There
hmm,
was not enough food for a lot of people, but then there was not enough food that it was cooked anymore because all those nobles didn't have a kitchen. So it became an interesting fact that
yeah.
people, and what I think one of the first restaurants was Taiwan. Is that it? Or Grand Véfour, Le Grand
It's,
Véfour.
it's one of them. Yeah,
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 so they started, that's literally right after the revolution. People started to do à la carte where you could actually pick a menu,
right,
because before that, restaurants were just a menu already done that you eat whatever is available. It's like a soup, a stew, a tourte, and
The
that's
pot
it.
au feu.
Yeah. But now you can actually pick. You can actually make your
Yeah,
Russian style.
right,
Russian
right,
style means that you can eat first the appetizer, then the main course, then the dessert.
right.
Well, it was entremet. So you have entrée. Entrée is appetizer. Entremet is in between, and then you have the les brigades. Yeah, les brigades. There you go. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And that's why, for hundreds of years, the kitchen, the professional kitchen, has been a really desirable thing for young people to go
Yeah,
into, because if you came from a peasant class, you had very little hope of advancing yourself. I mean, especially if you weren't the oldest son and weren't
right.
inheriting the farm, you had to figure out how you were going to make a living. And going into a professional kitchen was a great, I mean, it was, in those early days, it was brutal work. It was hard, brutal work. Um,
It's been hard for a very long time.
yeah, it's
It's
still hard
restaurant is
work.
very yeah. Restaurant is a hard work, but it's really a good work. And one of the restaurants that you can see today, if you are interested, is go to La Coupole in Paris.
Yeah,
You can really see the brigade system. It's
yeah,
crazy. When the door open, when they have to, you sit not far from the kitchen and you can see those huge kitchen with those lines. Oh my God,
yeah,
it's insane. So a good place to go check is really La Coupole in
yeah,
Paris.
yeah.
It's huge restaurant. They serve so many meals, and you can really see brigade in there.
Now, this codification of the food is why French cuisine is so dominant in every hotel in the world. I mean, it's why cooking schools it basically teach French cuisine. And
Yeah,
yeah, of course the egos go wild. I mean,
but Kenny, that's the thing, man. When you work with a bunch of like artists, they're not really artists, but that's the only way you can keep a chef or a cook. If his ego gets how do you say that? You
doesn't
take
get
care of his ego.
massaged.
It has to. Otherwise, the chef has no interest because they don't make a lot of money. It's very hard work. The only thing they have is the satisfaction of seeing the customer's pleasure, and
Right.
that's why they do that.
And some of those early restaurants, particularly the hotels in Paris, the whole concept of having an open kitchen where you're dining and you're watching the cooks cook. Well, that was not done in the beginning. In those
No.
hotels, sometimes the kitchens were 2 or 3 floors below street level,
Yeah,
uh,
or
or
above. It
above.
has.
Yeah. And that's came in the dumb waiters. And
Yeah,
George
yeah.
Orwell wrote about working in kitchens. He wrote a book called Down and Out in Paris and London, and he wrote
Oh
about
wow.
working in the restaurant kitchens in Paris
Oh my God, it's
would have been
crazy.
in the teens, 20s, and even as late as the 20s. I mean, and the 30s. It was brutal. I mean, you were underground for 12,
Yeah,
14 hours.
right.
You never saw the sun.
No.
So when you did get off work, it was nighttime, and when you got to work, it was still nighttime, and you're
Well,
lucky if you had a day off.
my when I was working, so when I was working, when I started to work at 17. Well, I started to work at 15. But when I first went to restaurants out of France, I was not my mom. I was working every day from lunch and dinner every day. So I was the only person, right? There's no, you don't have a shift. It's every day or you don't take it the shift, and
Right.
it's every day. There's no day off. So it's day and night for 7 days,
Yeah.
non-stop. And my friend, I was a waiter when I opened a restaurant in Paris, I was 30 something. So that's not too long ago. Some of my friends, they were waiter in a really cool place like Le Père Fouettard, Le Père Tranquille, those really cool places in Les
Yeah.
Halles, those places.
Yep.
They work 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
They make tons of money. They made a lot of money, but they work 16 hours a day. And that's every day.
And
It's crazy.
typically the restaurant would close for 2 weeks in August, and that's when everyone would get their vacation. So you'd go to the shore, you'd go skiing, whatever you did. I had a priest threw a knife at him hard enough that it stuck in the wall beside him.
No, but
My brother did that to me once.
that
Stuck it in
happens a
my
lot.
elbow from across the room.
Oh, Kenny, that happens all the time. Are you kidding? This is like, this is super common.
I've heard
It's
of
usually
chefs throwing pots at
I
people, and
pots with hot water in there.
Yeah.
or this is really crazy. No,
Yeah.
chef get really so no more of that. We don't have that anymore. But in my time, that was yeah, chef sport. That's true.
Yeah.
It's just like that. It's just like that. So you can't be weak in the kitchen. That's why those all those kids today, I'm sorry to say, but they're way too weak. Everybody's like, oh my God, I can't carry that. No, no, no. You
Yeah, they
need to
wouldn't have
like,
survived in a kitchen
yeah,
in, 100
no,
years
no
ago.
way, no way,
Yeah.
not possible. So the restaurant is changing, you know.
Yeah, working in a restaurant kitchen today is pretty posh compared to a century ago, where it would have been
Oh my God.
really, like you said, long, brutal hours, a lot of hard
And you have to
work,
carry stuff and people, and
and
in
you
the
had to do
kitchen, you don't,
whatever the chef said, so
and you don't have to, and you don't say please and thank you. There's no time for that. It's like
yeah,
orders. It
yeah.
doesn't mean that it's just the way it is. You don't have to say, please, can you get me? No, we don't have time. It's like, get to the chase. We need to serve those people, right?
Also, in those days, the menus were long. They had menus that were
Wow.
several pages long of
Too
dishes,
much.
and you had to be able to put all that stuff out. So they had a tremendous amount of food in the larders. They had a huge team of cooks that had to be able to prepare all this stuff. If somebody
And
on a whim
everybody
wanted
has
duck
his,
à l'orange, you had to
yeah,
make it.
everybody has his roles. Remember, chef, we talked about the expediter, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of roles in the kitchen that you don't see today anymore. There's none of that. This is all gone. But one of the big role in the kitchen is called the expediter. Expediter is the person that usually the chef or someone who is as good that is at the pass. The pass is where the plate go out, right, in the
Hmm.
dining room. And then he controls everything. He puts, usually he will say, for example, the expediter will be the one who put the little things, adjust for seasoning, maybe black pepper, whatever, but he's the one who makes sure the tables are going to the right place, they're fired, and they look correctly, right?
Yeah. He or she is the last one to see that plate before it heads out to the dining room. So they're the
Yeah,
ones that have to make sure that everything's perfect, that the rim is clean, that everything is on the plate that's supposed to be on the plate.
right.
You forgot the carrots, you forgot the
Well,
parsley.
sometimes that's the thing. He has the garnish, and sometimes the expediter will put the garnish, like the
Uh-huh.
parsley, the whatever, right? Yep.
Yeah, that's the most important phrase in the restaurant business is behind you. I don't know how many
No,
times at the bar
it's
I've
like,
I've swung just at the bar, which is not as dangerous as being in the kitchen, but I've been in the bar where I swung around to get
oh
somebody and
yeah, but it's
practically,
not.
clobbered
You
somebody.
don't say behind you. You say hard behind.
Yeah.
So hard behind doesn't mean you have a hard behind. I mean, it
Well, when
may.
I first worked in the restaurant business, somebody said hot behind and I said, "Oh, thank you."
I know, right? But you didn't move. Hard behind is yeah, or sharp coming or knife coming.
Right.
Yeah, you have
Right.
to listen to what's going on in the kitchen because that's also now. What's his name? You talked about him earlier, Grégoire. Uh,
Gregoire, yeah.
he was telling me that in the kitchen there's no noise at all. Right? Some of the kitchen are very screamy. Some of them have no noise. It all depends the chef. The chef kind of put the tone.
Right.
In a good kitchen, nobody talks.
Right.
No,
You don't
there's
have time.
no.
You're focused on
Uh,
what you're doing.
we have to be
And
really
as soon as
focused.
you start having chit chat with your neighbor,
No,
that's when you're burning something or you're
yeah,
forgetting to you leave
right.
something off the plate or
Can't do that. Yeah. So
I
it's
have to get
really,
used to
really.
that at the bar. I'll line up a bunch of cocktail shakers and I'm making, maybe 3 or 4 cocktails at once. And there'll be somebody at the bar who just asks me questions about
I know.
every single thing I do. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm
Ah!
really trying to focus on what I'm doing here. And
Oh my God.
what is that? What are you doing now?
I know.
What do you call that drink?
You're like
What's that
nothing.
liqueur?
It's fine.
I've gotten used to it, but it's a funny thing, and in the kitchen, you don't have somebody talking to you the whole time, unless it's a chatty cook, and they learn very quickly that they better focus on what they're supposed to be focused on, because you also have to remember a lot when you're working on the line in a kitchen. These orders get fired. You have to remember that you've got this started on this burner, and you've got this. And what about people in their damn
Yeah,
phones?
no, they don't have their phone in the kitchen, man. Not when in a good kitchen you don't see that. You don't see phones. You don't see
No.
anything.
No. Everybody's dressed the same. They're
Exceptionally,
all in chef's whites,
yeah,
aprons,
exceptionally
hats.
when they, like now you can see they taking pictures because you can see on the social media a bunch of pictures. But if a chef sees that, he will kick you out. Unless right now there's no staff, right? So now we are much more lenient with people, and
Well, and
that's what the problem is. You it's not that you can't find good staff, but people don't work in the kitchen, so you take whatever you can. And the problem today is whatever you can is not great. It's
well,
not
and if
great.
you're putting picture if
That's the thing,
a restaurant wants to put pictures of their food on social media, but typically what happens is you say, okay,
right?
we want to photograph the pasta puttanesca, so you make one and you
Right.
send it out and it gets put on a table somewhere and the
Right. Right. Right.
person that handles your social media takes a picture and posts it. And but the cooks don't have time for that. If and let's put it this way, if the cooks have time to do that, then your restaurant's not very busy.
Yeah.
So
So
you
what
need to
that's
address that issue.
who said in a restaurant you never have time off, right? You
You
don't
never have
just
what?
if you time off. You don't. There's nothing. It's always something to do. So
Right.
you can never show the chef or anybody that you're doing nothing, because that means something should be done now, like peeling something, putting away something. There's so much to do in the restaurant that nothing can like on the phone is impossible. If I would see that, I would that person would be gone.
Yeah.
My job is different today because there's a bunch of downtime in what I do today.
Right.
But when I used to work in kitchen, like there's no downtime. You don't have downtime. It doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so the Expediter is really cool. You don't see them a lot anymore, but those are the people
I worked
that,
for some restaurants in New York that very definitely had an expediter, and it was the chef. Um,
yeah, most of the time is the chef. So the chef kind of, you see, the chef doesn't work. He does work. He just doesn't
he
cook
does a
because he
lot
has
of work,
to.
but
Yeah, he has to
he
monitor
doesn't
all this.
stand at the stove necessarily.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Excuse me, chef. I had to get some.
I mean, basically, the chef does whatever the chef wants to do. So if the chef feels like
Yeah,
cooking that day, he can or she can. But
right. Well,
typically, the
sometimes he has to because there's
yeah,
nobody else.
right. But typically, the chef is there to they design the food. They dictate what's
Yeah,
on the plate, how it should look, how it should be served, and then they're the ones that look at every plate to make sure that it's what it's supposed to be, which is very important, especially if people are paying a lot of money to come in and eat at your restaurant. I mean, part of going to a restaurant is it's a bit of theater. It's entertainment. It's not just, oh, I'm hungry, I need to eat. So I'm gonna, you don't just go to Taiwan because, oh, I'm hungry and I need to eat. You go to Taiwan because you want that experience. You want this theatrical
yeah.
presentation. And so if
Theater.
your plate
That's great.
arrives
Yeah.
looking like it maybe would at the local diner, well, that's not very satisfying and it's certainly not worth the money. So it's very important that this everything be absolutely perfect.
Well, that's the thing, when James, I remember when I was, so I had a few friends in the city, like that I knew, like Gary Danko. I knew
Mhm.
this guy,
Gary's a great
George
guy.
George Moron, those
Uh-huh.
those kind of places, right?
Yep.
And I remember for a while there was all these people making tons of money and having no respect for food.
Uh-huh.
And I would go, and one day I went there, and it was a bunch of people in sweats, in like
Oh yeah.
sport, super loud in the table, really ordering. And my friend George at the time was really upset about the fact that he was trying to recreate an atmosphere, a theatrical atmosphere, like you said, with
Mhm.
the food and stuff, and these people are yelling and screaming and ordering tequila and super expensive stuff. It was that kind of break the whole thing, man.
Right.
It's like you have money, I understand, it's cool, but just respect where you go. Just enjoy.
Right.
The chef is trying to show you something. He's trying to educate you into something. Pay attention. It takes an hour or two of your life. Pay attention. It's not you're not the star. The chef
Right.
is the star. Just let it do its job. Don't. It's like you said. It's not going just to eat and no. It
Right.
experience what he has to offer. That's why is.
And if you want to dress like that and you want to behave like that, there are plenty of sports bars that are set up just for that kind of behavior. You go, you watch
Right.
the game, you drink beer, you yell, you scream. But
And
that's
yeah, on
not.
the other hand, and people say, well, yeah, I should be able to dress. It's true. You should be able to dress absolutely how you want to. But when you go to a very nice place where the chef has spent so much money into that restaurant, it's everything is too pretty and stuff. Just make a little effort. That's all.
Yeah,
It's that
I
simple.
agree. I agree. And it's more fun.
If
It's more
do you
fun
know
to
that?
get a little dressed up and go out and be quiet.
Do you know that in Paris, the opera,
Uh-huh.
and so my mom is has a membership to the opera, right? And she has a membership to the opera. There's a day a month where you have to have talks. You can't
Yeah.
go to the opera. Lots of other day you can go to the opera dressing whatever. But there's a day I forgot which way and I forgot the frequency. But my mom was had this membership where you have to be dressed to go to the opera, and they won't
Right.
let you in if you are not wearing like a tuxedo and stuff like that.
Right.
It's beautiful. And I don't know if you've ever been to the Opera of Paris. I mean,
Yes, I
the
have.
stair. It's just like it's
Beautiful
magnificent,
grand
right?
staircase. You just want to be dressed up.
Wow, and it's just crazy. It just it's beautiful, and it's not to again. It's not like you want to show that you're rich. No, you want to make an effort in your dressing.
Right. You want to be
I'm not
respectable.
rich. I'm not rich, but I would either rent a tux or borrow a tux or get a nice at least black jacket, something very
Yeah.
nice, and I would go and enjoy that beautiful night. But that was it. There's
I mean,
nothing like.
when I went to the Paris Opera, I wore a suit and tie.
Oh
I didn't
yeah,
have a
it's
tuxedo and it
just
wasn't required that day, but we all were in suits and ties.
oh, it's black tire, black
Black
attire.
tie,
I mean,
yeah.
black.
Yeah.
So
Well,
the day a month, right?
At the Metropolitan Opera in New York, when they have an opening, typically people wear black tie and gowns and everything, and it's fun. It's great. It's great to do. And I've been to the Met Opera many times, far more than I've been to the Paris Opera, and we always wore jackets and ties,
Oh
and
yeah,
we always were dressed up. My favorite
that's
thing
good.
is I
Yeah,
used to
no.
go. Uh, the guys I worked for, Jack and Joel at Dean and DeLuca, Joel Dean and Jack Shaglick, um, we used to go to the opera together a lot. And my favorite thing to do was we would have reservations at Café des Artistes for after the
Oh
opera
wow,
because there weren't a lot of
right,
places open that you could go
right.
to and get food after the opera because the opera often ended at 11 o'clock or something. So we would go to Café des Artistes, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was up there right just a few blocks from the Met. So we would walk over to Café des Artistes, and oh god, it was my favorite
Wow.
thing to do. I would
I
always
hate
get
it.
the charcuterie
You know,
garni,
yeah,
and we'd get a
choucroute. Oh
bottle
my
of
God.
really good wine, and it was just so fun.
So
And
opera was not my favorite. I like concert. So my mom would take us to all these places, but I hated opera. Oh my God.
oh really? Oh, I love the opera.
I like classical music a lot,
Hmm.
concerto, all this stuff. I like theater a lot, but opera I couldn't. That was too much. Too much
Opera's an
screaming.
acquired taste
Too
for
much screaming
sure.
for me.
I got turned on to it by them basically, and I really loved it. And I
Yeah,
got to see some great singers and some great productions. I
yeah,
also saw some mediocre productions,
yeah.
which were you kind of sat through, but I saw some great stuff. And but I love I love symphony too. I love the orchestras. And
But when you go to the opera in Paris, right around the opera, there's all these great restaurants. Rue
yeah.
Boulevard Haussmann.
Hmm.
You have what's that restaurant? That choucroute restaurant. I forgot the name. Oh my God.
Oh.
Anyway, there's a lot of brasserie. So brasserie,
Hmm.
the brasseur is kind of like a restaurant that's a little more uh, for the people.
Hmm.
And there's lots of brasserie in Paris. You can eat pretty much until really late, and it's
Yeah.
very traditional. It's steak frites, langue, tongue,
Yeah.
choucroute,
Yep.
cassoulet,
Yep.
saucisse aux lentilles,
Real
and then
peasant food. It's real.
yeah,
It's like real earthy kind of French country cooking in a
yeah,
lot of them.
available, and that's what you go. You go to the restaurant first, then you go to the opera.
Yeah,
Anyway,
and they usually have a great selection of beers too at brasseries. Um,
fish, ah,
fish.
fish. One of my chef. So you guys, is one of my chef. Fish is from Costa Rica. Is fantastic. Oh, sorry, Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. I've been to Puerto Rico.
And he just came back from it. And when he's a chef, he doesn't look like that, guys. Just and fish is pretty awesome. I really miss. Yeah, I miss you. Of course, I miss you.
I miss
Puerto
Puerto
Rico.
Rico.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
used to
Stop,
yeah, I used to
stop
go down to
screaming.
Puerto Rico when I lived in New York. I had friends
I
down
want to
there.
go. I want to go. I see. I've
It's
seen some pictures.
beautiful.
So,
Yeah.
Fish, I have a chef that I want you to meet. We have one chef at Kitchen on Fire called, her name is Ansalis. And she's, I think she's from Puerto Rico and she used to live in the Bronx. Whoa, look at that. Same as this guy, Fish, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so Fish has classes and he's going to put some more classes on Puerto Rico. And, oh man, I would love to go.
It's a beautiful
Absolutely.
island. It's a beautiful place. The people are great. There's a lot of good
Yeah,
food
yeah,
down there.
yeah.
The beaches
Oh
are
yeah.
just
So Fish
heaven.
has a Puerto Rican class at Kitchen on Fire actually. I hope we can put a new one uh, soon. But we do that class. He is the chef for that. It's really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, we have about 10 minutes. James, do you have another question for us or
Yeah. Here's a question that
what
confuses a
time?
lot of people. Why is chocolate from Belgium and Switzerland so acclaimed, and yet it's called
Yeah,
Belgian chocolate or Swiss chocolate when the chocolate itself comes from South America? Good question. Well, because they have mastered the art of manipulating the cacao bean into a delicious and satisfying confection. So yes, the raw material comes from Central and South America mostly. They grow it in other places now. They grow some in Africa. I think they even grow some in the South Pacific. I don't know, but mainly, and of course originally, it comes from Central and South America. Chocolate being
right.
one of the foods that was taken back to the New World when Columbus first came to the
Hmm.
Americas, that forever changed
Right.
the way the world eats. Vanilla is another one. Chocolate and vanilla were both native to,
What about coffee?
and coffee.
Okay.
No, coffee started in Africa.
But I mean, like when that's one of the crazy stuff that in Europe they discovered and they loved it
Oh yeah.
instantly and it
Oh
became
yeah.
a really yeah big deal, right?
Yeah. Well, and before they had coffee, the elite in Spain and France would drink chocolate. That was the thing to have in the morning. You had um, your cup of chocolate. But anyway, chocolate eventually got to Switzerland and to Belgium, and there are two countries, both of which, and France, are all famous for their chocolate production. Some of the great names in chocolate, like Lindt and what's the famous French one? Anyway, there's a lot of big names in chocolate that come from these countries. Oh yeah, Valrhona. Um,
That's expensive, people. This is about $30 a pound.
yeah.
This is what is that? How many pound is that? 6 pound. Woo! That
So,
goes
in
back
other
in the
words, you
face.
you you call a chocolate Swiss chocolate not because they grew the cacao, but because they took it and manipulated it and tempered it and created these velvety,
Right,
beautiful
right.
concoctions. Whether it's just chocolate meant for cooking with and baking, or whether it's a finished product like you'd buy a box of chocolates, they they mastered the techniques for doing that. In fact, it was a Swiss person who eventually figured out how to make a hard chocolate. Because prior to that, chocolate was only a drink; it was a beverage, and it was always made to drink. And he figured out how to temper it and make this chocolate bar. Um, and that's a big deal because that's the foundation of the chocolate industry today, is chocolates that you eat, not chocolate that you drink.
Oh yeah.
Um, so
But the
that's why.
chocolate, so the chocolate that you drink, you can still experiment. One of the first coffee house in Paris called
Hmm.
Angelina, or where in the end of the 1800, like 1890s, and like where Art Nouveau started. So Art
Hmm.
Nouveau is a very small period of time in the art where it was like 1895 to 1913, just when
maybe.
before the First World War. It's a very short period of time. Art Nouveau is it's called the noodle art. It's where the things are very intricate and
Well, they
formed.
tried to recreate nature in their art, so it
Right.
was a lot of like leaves and flowers and but very
And then
stylized.
right, and that's one of the first time that they were creating some cafes where women can gather together.
Yeah,
Because in the old days, women had no place to go except where they were. The women of bad companies, they would go in taverns, right?
right.
But any other woman that was not a not just prostitute, but people that would go out and have fun and stuff like that. If you were not going out in cabarets, then you had no place to go. And the only place they could go is in those cafes where they drink chocolate or eat little pastries and cafes. And that was the only time that people could actually go out as a women. It's pretty
Yeah.
crazy. Huh?
If a woman went to
La
a
Belle
really
Époque,
yeah,
exactly.
if a woman went to a really fine restaurant, she would be with her husband or
Yeah. Oh
somebody
yeah.
or but not by
No
herself.
way.
You
No,
didn't
no,
go
no.
by
Yeah, that's
yourself.
crazy, huh? And yeah, it's 1900.
It's still, it's still difficult in many places for women to go out and dine by themselves. It's to this day, I mean, a lot of women say they have a hard time going to a restaurant by themselves because they get treated differently. People, stare at them, wonder what they're up to. It's weird. It's weird.
Sucks.
Um, but
Well, that's the thing. You remember, James, at César, we were watching everyone that comes to the bar, and we wanted women to be completely comfortable.
yeah,
And remember, we were watching when people were going too aggressive.
yep.
We would go to the person and we'd say, "You need to stop and you need to leave" or something. And we were very very hard on those
And we still
because
are.
no way, man. If someone is at the bar and some idiot is like to like, oh my God. I mean, it's not
There,
like it
there.
happens a lot, Chef, but it used to when we first started. You know, it was a bunch of
We
idiots.
have several customers still today, females who come to the bar by
Right.
themselves, and they don't
Exactly.
come there to meet somebody. They're not trying to
No,
get picked. They're there to have a
no.
drink,
Right.
and and some of them were very shy
Exactly.
at first. We've
Right.
gotten to
Right.
know them, so they talk
Right.
to us.
Right.
But they're not there to meet men. They're
No.
there to enjoy a cocktail, maybe have a
To
bite to
be
eat.
around people, but
Yeah.
without absolutely,
Sometimes they'll
absolutely.
get into conversations,
Hmm.
and there are men that sit at the bar that will talk to anybody, and they will talk to these women, but they're not
Yeah.
trying to
No. No. Right. Yeah.
pick them
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. But
They're just,
yeah,
you know,
like a bar, but it
friendly
that's
people, and the women usually pick up on that. They can tell who's
totally.
the
It's true.
predator and who's just a friendly
It's
person that
very
wants
true.
to.
It's so true, man. But the bartender is the one who's gonna have to
Yep,
pay attention to his bar because if the bartender doesn't pay attention, then nobody's gonna feel comfortable, and that's the bartender's job. He needs to pick up on cues.
right before the
Because,
pandemic, there was a guy and this woman was in the bar, and I really had to come down on this guy because he
oh
started
yeah,
saying some really inappropriate things, and I finally had to make him leave. People say it's pretty
no,
weird for a man to
I've
dine
done it.
alone for different. I've traveled a lot, and when I sit at a table and order reason, well, it's
Kenny, I've done a lot of eating by myself when I traveled, and not
me
a
too.
problem. I don't care. It's
Yeah.
really cool, actually.
The hardest part about eating alone is what do you do? Usually if you're with somebody, you talk.
Yeah,
So
but
if
I
I'm
take a
alone, but I
book.
usually
No,
have,
oh
I
my God,
sometimes have a book or I'll have a notebook and I will write while I'm,
exactly. Because see, the
which is
thing is,
funny because people always assume I'm a restaurant critic. They
I
think
know,
I'm,
right? It's
they think
like,
I'm writing
no,
about
no,
and I'm,
no. You have to understand that for me, I love to be by myself because I'm in the public all the time. So if I can find some quiet time, I love
yeah.
it. It's way, way cool. See, I don't need to have like this constant um, uh, how do you say that? Like your attention needs to
Well,
be triggered all the time. No, I
but it's
like
also one
to,
of the
I like,
reasons I like to sit at the bar. Usually if I'm by
yeah,
myself, I like to sit at the bar and
that's
then
right.
it's perfectly normal to be by yourself. But in Europe,
James,
I used to
it's
travel to
about
Europe all the time and always ate by myself and I enjoyed it, but I would keep my little journal and anyway,
Jimbo
well,
time.
we're just about out of time. We've got
So we are
15
going
seconds left.
to, yeah, we're going to put together a long, I think a 4 or 5 series podcast about microbes and
Yes.
how we evolve from them. And we have some guests in mind. One is
We're
going
going
to
to
be
have a
a
winemaker. We're going to have a
Fred
salumiere. We're going to have
Salumiere, which
a
is
brewer, a
can you
baker, maybe a
can you explain
candlestick maker.
Salumiere? What is that?
It's a person that makes sausages and salami, and it's basically what the
Prosciutto.
French would call a charcutier.
Yeah.
So,
And all these people will have something in common. All of them. They're using microbes to process food. So
yeah.
we're gonna have as soon as we can start, we'll post in advance so you guys can don't miss it.
But we're
But
going to
it's gonna
do
be
it this
very interesting.
spring, so look forward to
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Good.
And that's all
Well,
I have to say about that.
thank you, people. Good to see you again, everyone.
Thanks for joining
Yeah.
us. I'll probably get this frog out of my throat by next week, and then we'll cook him.
Great.
We'll cook his legs.
Oh man. Ciao, guys. See ya.